broken system, chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street.
Any American casualties are highest. It's a dangerous and difficult mission, but it must be seen through. And
debates turn to anger, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. Welcome to the bullpen, where we still survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Faces on the screen, flashing perfect teeth. But behind those eyes, just rot and greed. Politicians turn to whispers beneath. They all just get what they need.
And is that a socialist or progressive perspective?
Whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rides. But this game will blink you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where we still survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
Listen, I think that it gives a lot of people. Or did you like it?
Bullpen, where we still survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
Good morning. Welcome to the Bullpen, episode 12. I'm a McLiar. Yeah. Thank you to Chad for that AI-generated thumbnail for this morning.
Oh, thanks for Grok for making it so we can make these kinds of AI images, because other ones won't let you do that.
I know. I still can't believe she tried to claim that she worked at McDonald's before putting on her knee pads.
Working class stolen valor. That's what she's trying to do.
Yeah. We got a ton of stuff to cover this week. Let's just do a rundown real quick, see what we can hit. The Trump trial, RFK ballot issues, endorsements, the debate, Tenet Media, Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, Crowder's undercover stuff, and Hunter pleads guilty. Where would you like to start, sir?
Well, I like the idea of starting with Hunter pleading guilty and then smiling about it, because I think that's giving away what's going to be happening for him.
Yeah, I guarantee you, no matter what Joe Biden said about the pardon, he's not running now. He will absolutely pardon his son.
Yeah, I mean
that, or if she were to happen to win, there's a deal in place that she will pardon his son.
Oh, it doesn't matter if he wins or not. Biden's going to pardon him. That way, she wouldn't do it because she'll let Biden take even if she won, in theory, she'll let Biden take the political hit. People will be like, oh, Biden's corrupt by pardoning his own son. And she'll just be like, he's still president. I can't stop him.
You're right.
That way she'll get to go out and disagree and say, like, I do disagree with what Joe did. Joe's a great man. He's a great president, but the rule of law is sacrosanct, and that shouldn't have happened. And then it'll just go away.
But that's assuming that the October surprise this year is not them either 25thing him or him stepping down. to make her the current president to try to get her another bump.
I don't know
Because
that works though.
that's
I
not, nothing's working for them at the moment.
Yeah,
They'll try
because
anything.
the one thing they can keep going on trying to do is say she'll be the first female, black female, Indian female, all the boxes, right? She'll be the first XYZ president. And that's why you need to go out and support her. If they 25th him and she comes in and she, the glass ceiling's broken now, I guess then there's going to be a lot of people who might mentally be like, well, I mean, we've already done that now. I don't have to do anything.
The shortest presidency in history.
Yep.
A 3 to 5 month presidency. Yeah.
So
I don't
Eric
know.
says he's in the Biden stepping down pardon everybody before Harris is in camp. Bush agrees they'll just lie. Got it, Chad. Yeah, which is what they'll do. I mean, why would that be any different than what our normal expectation is?
Yeah,
So,
I really do think that something will happen with Biden before the election to try to give her a bump, because I just think, looking at what's going on, she got no bump out of the DNC. The only bump she got was, hey, we don't have to vote for Biden anymore. So, I mean, they're going to do something, because right now she's in a basically statistical tie with Trump, and that is not good for their side, because in the polling, typically you've got 3 to 5 points that they're not taking into account for the Republicans. Trump was polling far worse in both of the last elections, and arguably he won both.
And they still, I still think there's a lot of flux about what the makeup of the electorate's going to be. One of the bigger areas of support that Kamala gets in polling is from younger voters, meaning under 35s, under 40, depending on where they break the demographic down. Sometimes it's over 40, sometimes it's 45, sometimes it's under 30, whatever. The youngest group tends to be the most favorable group to her. And if that,
for the
that
most
group,
part, it's the females.
Yep. But that group is also notorious for being the one that usually shows up the least to vote.
Right.
One of the things that helped Obama in 2008 and 2009 is that he got them to show up in greater numbers than they usually do. And that helped, I mean, obviously 2008 was more of a blowout, and 2012 was kind of a traditional win. But Kamala, I saw one tweet that actually summed it up great. Like, Kamala is polling just like Joe Biden, but without the white working class support, which doesn't win, because Joe Biden did not bring back the Obama coalition. He didn't. He managed to. He lost numbers with African Americans, lost numbers with Latinos. What Joe Biden did, if you believe the results, is that he swung
81 million.
Swung about 5% of the white working class vote back to him, which was enough in the swing counties, if you believe it again, to get him the wins.
Yeah, without
Kamala's not getting that support.
Bellwether county or state. Yeah.
Yep.
No, she's not getting that support. The support she's getting is from older white women, liberal or leftist, which is funny because we also saw the story coming out about who has the most mental issues in the country. White women, leftist, by a lot. Every one of them is claiming to have some kind of mental breakdown. But on Hunter, did you find it hilarious that he wants to plead guilty without?
He wanted an Alford plea, which is the it doesn't work. Like,
it's the rarest of plea deals. The DOJ, I don't think, has ever taken one of them.
Yeah.
Not on the federal level, at least.
Because an Alford plea is not under DOJ policy. You cannot accept a plea where a defendant does not admit guilt. And the reason you do that is because an Alford plea does, even though they plead guilty, gives them the ability to basically appeal as an innocent person,
Right.
saying like
I'm
they did not
innocent,
actually.
but I'm gonna take the hit for it.
Yeah, so you don't want to do that because in a plea arrangement, there's a part of it where the defendant pleading guilty has to allocute, basically admit what they're pleading guilty to and what they did.
Right.
And so an Alford plea allows someone to get up, and what they allocute to is that I'm innocent, but the evidence against me is overwhelming and I would be likely convicted, so I'm accepting the plea agreement.
Yeah.
The DOJ policy doesn't allow for that. And they tried to pull that shenanigan right. And it was on day one of the trial supposed to be starting. And then when they wouldn't, they just went to a straight plea deal. And the fact that he was still smiling coming out makes me, the fix is in. Fix is definitely in.
Absolutely. He won't see any jail time, or if he does, it'll be a nominal term, and then, a couple days later, pardon or commute the sentence. I think that it probably won't be a pardon. I think it'll just be commuting the sentence, because I think if you actually were to pardon him, that's going too far. But who knows with the Dems? The Dems do what Dems do.
Yep. It's so obvious that they do these things. They get away with it. And I don't know.
Which takes us over to the Trump trials.
Yeah. Where we did get a delay.
We got a delay to, what's the new date? It's right before, it's like October 28th or something like that. Like
it's after the election. No, they moved.
Did they move it after?
The sentencing's after. It's like November 28th.
Okay. So we'll have Trump elected at that point, and then they'll try to put him in jail. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's going to work wonderfully for them. I mean, this whole thing has backfired in their faces so much. I mean, the DOJ, and this also brings in the Crowder story. The DOJ basically, the Crowder undercover bit was, they have somebody on camera saying, yeah, the whole thing is a sham. It's all for looks. There's really nothing to it. There's nothing behind these cases. They were just trying to get clicks and to get him put in jail at some point, just to be called a felon, which we've said the whole time. But every time they've done anything, it has given Trump the bump, not the Dems. So it's not working the way they wanted it to.
Yeah, and there's new polling even coming out where no bump, no result, and that's why the mirage of Kamala has faded, basically, because it never existed. They were propping it up. I don't think it's any coincidence that all of the mainstream polling couldn't continue to prop it up as soon as she opened her mouth in an interview.
Yeah,
and looks terrible.
The interview was a joke. Hell, I even threw it into the intro, the new video of her talking. What was the whole thing that she was doing yesterday? It's so vapid, I can't even remember what she was trying to talk about. It was just more word salad, which is every time she opens her freaking mouth. But the debate is going to hurt bad. Yeah. So yesterday they were asking her, what's the best part of debate prep for you? And she said, being at the spice store. I mean, she's completely brain dead in there. I mean, she's not brain dead in the same way that Joe is. Joe actually, has been in government for a long time. His brain actually did function at some point, even though it functioned to the wrong side of things. But she has no opinions of her own.
Yeah.
Somebody's angry.
Are you this dog barking coming through? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, put talk about Democrats too loud. Dog barks. That's what happens.
That'll do it. Yeah,
Uh,
she's just an unserious, stupid person. I mean, I
I
don't know
think it's
if there's
funny
any other way to put it.
that all of her public appearances are based around going to get some kind of food.
Right.
She's getting Doritos. She's getting.
She's at Penzi Spices getting spice because her VP candidate, doesn't know what spices are. She grows chili peppers. What'd you go kick the dog?
No, I no, she's a small dog and she gets. It's probably because one of the balls she wants to get thrown to her is under a couch or something, and she gets all antsy about it.
Yeah, mine does the same thing, and mine's not small. He can move the couch on his own, but he won't.
Yeah, Boosh. Humans eat, right? That's something humans do.
Yes, Lisa, Penzi Spice Owners is ultra liberal, but it's also the only place that I can find extremely hot crushed red peppers, not just regular crushed red peppers. But I've bought 2 jars of it over the last 10 years, and I probably won't buy any more from them.
Well,
I've
we
given
need
them
to talk,
$3.
We need to talk to Matt and see if Red Gun Tea wants to open up a spice division.
Yeah. That or we need Jeremy Spices. I mean, it could be any of the Jeremys. D-Day Cobra, the Quartering, or Boring.
It can be the
Any
new
of them.
coffee because they all have their coffee. Or they all coffee. They all have custom built computer models. It's a thing.
The spice must flow.
That would be the name of a great,
The sleeper must awaken.
What are you naming your spice business? I'm going to name my spice business Arrakis.
Yeah.
Or Chome.
Melange.
Chome. I'm opening a spice store called Chome.
Blue spices.
Yeah, we're getting
Chome's
too
a good
deep
one.
dive into nerdy sci-fi.
Dune.
Yeah, so hopefully we're not losing the people here for the political talk.
Oh, I think the people that watch us politically are probably in this community already and are deep into it.
Oh man, how stupid would it how bad would Kamala fail a Bene Gesserit test? That'd be hilarious.
She would not come out human. That's for sure. The Gom Jabbar would take her.
If only.
So the endorsements.
Yeah, I don't know that this helps them the way they think it does. Like
No.
the idea of Kamala Harris trotting out that Dick Cheney and Bush and Liz Cheney are like, we'd rather have her in here. How does that, like, your biggest weakness is white working class voters? I hate to break it to you, they don't have a lot of fond feelings for the Cheney family. The Cheney family kind of represents the worst of politics to that group,
right? And they've called him the devil for how many years has it been? Almost 20 at this point. More than that.
Yeah, I mean, Cheney shot someone.
He was the literal devil. Yeah, he shot somebody in the face. And now they're all like, look, we got the Cheneys. This is fantastic. In the meantime, the trade seems to have been they get the Cheneys and Kinzinger, and we get RFK and Tulsi Gabbard. I think we come out on the top end of that trade deal.
It reminds me, you remember the Dave Chappelle show when they did the racial draft? And they had the white group drafting Colin Powell, and the black delegation was like, "We'll allow it as long as you also take Condoleezza Rice."
I never saw that one, but that's about right. I mean,
Davina getting in with the skill set that Kamala does have to rise through the ranks, and so she would be an honored matre.
That's getting into the late books there.
Late books, yeah. That's when Herbert was getting a little weird with some of his stuff, but it sort of makes sense.
Well,
what Davina is pointing out is that Willie Brown gave her promotions because of The Thing.
Her skills.
I mean, she's Hawk 2 of 1.0.
Well, she was
So-
trained by Montel Williams.
Oh, that was a little direct there. Yeah, so it's these like the Cheney, and then they're trotting out, like, they put out that like letter that 200 like national security people who worked in the Bush administration are all supporting Kamala. I mean, if you wanted to really support Trump's narrative about a deep state and uniparty that is willing to not actually have any principles because all they're about is DC power, congratulations, you've just confirmed it. It's like,
Yeah. These are all people that you called horrible for years and years and years, and now you welcome them as if, we're just going to forget everything. I mean, it's the same thing that they do with every nominee for the Republicans, though. I mean, Mitt Romney was the worst person on the planet when he was running against Barack. I mean, and still, I find it hilarious that Mitt Romney said that that Russia was still a threat, and Obama was like, "Yeah, 2008's calling and wants its foreign policy back." And now the thing that they are the most scared of on the planet is the freaking Russians. The Russians are busy. I don't think they're a major threat at the moment. I mean, they're not going to do anything outside of Ukraine because that would literally trigger the NATO clauses. The ones to be worried about are the Chinese, and the Chinese are the ones sleeping with Democrats and driving their cars and promote, getting involved in all the foreign policy for the Dems. We saw Kathy Hochul's, what was she, a deputy assistant? Turns out Chinese spy. Fang Fang, Chinese spy. Who is the Feinstein's assistant, Chinese spy.
I mean, we're not even counting the Confucius, whatever they called them, that they put on every major college campus, the Confucius centers, where they were funneling money into academia to buy and sell, that institution. It's funny that the Chinese learned a lesson that the Russians didn't. So when Reagan, for those of us, Reagan just came out, entertaining movie. It does distill down basically Reagan's philosophy that, like, communism can't keep up with a free market economy in being nimble and adaptable and able to build en masse. And that's a lesson everybody should have learned from World War II, right? Russia had all this territory. They could have had factories that were running. Like, Germany didn't have the capability of deep bombing into all of Russian territory. They could have had they didn't have any factories to build tanks in mass. Right. What the United States did is we converted all our car factories and we were pumping out Shermans by the hundreds a day. So the Sherman was the most inferior tank of World War II, but it ended up winning because we could put overwhelming numbers on there. So if you take that lesson and you extrapolate it out, that's what Reagan kind of knew and inferred and was kind of understood intrinsically, that communism can't keep up with that. So as we're inflating, like, the Reagan went into hyper competition of building up the military, and Russia was trying to keep up, and they couldn't, and it ended up breaking them because they already had problems along the edges of the Soviet sphere, and that exacerbated it. The Solidarity movement in Poland, as an example. What China learned is that it's far cheaper, instead of getting into an arms race, to just buy the American politicians.
Right. Infiltrate by the politicians.
You get so much bigger bang for your buck because you can get congressmen for less than it costs to build you one tank. And and then when you add that up, instead of having to do a whole armored battalion, for the cost of an armored battalion, you've got an entire Congress that can then start making decisions, and you get most favored nation status. I mean, people forget, it goes back to the 90s. Remember Clinton leasing out the Lincoln bedroom And Al Gore, and a lot of those fundraising scandals were out of California and involved Chinese nationals funneling money in from China into the specifically Democratic politics. So it's been going on in our faces. Obvious. It was back when the DOJ actually publicized these things, and you would learn about it. We've known about these scandals since the mid 90s, and the Chinese just kept doing it. And by the late 90s, early O's, between the end of the Clinton administration and beginning of Bush W, they get the most favored nation trading status. And that's immediately when all those factories that, built all these things in America really offshored. They were already moving things to Mexico after NAFTA, but when China got most favored nations, meaning free trade back and forth, allegedly, we never get free trade in. They offshored all those factory jobs, and China got even more. Basically, China is buying our politicians with our money to advance their agenda. And they have been since the 90s. And the only person who took it seriously economically was Trump, by putting 100, 150, 200% tariffs on items manufactured in China to make it economically viable to make things back in the US and to reshore jobs. That's also when they put into the tax bills where you could repatriate money and not be paid taxes on it if you are building and putting jobs in the US.
Well, and that is what he's going to do again. I mean, that's one of the few things that that the Biden-Harris administration did not do. They did not remove most of the tariffs that he had put in place.
They removed
even
key ones, though.
They removed key ones, and Trump would be putting them
they
right
also,
back in place.
And they also made
the hell out of everybody.
They also made EVs made in China eligible for the tax credits. They also made, they took out, they left things in there to try to make it look like they didn't, but they took out the key ones that mattered most. And they rejoined, I believe we rejoined the Paris Climate Accord bullshit.
Yeah.
Yes. Which, if you look at it, guess which country doesn't have to do anything? China. So who's building all the coal-fired plants they can and getting cheap energy, because coal, natural gas is pretty inexpensive and effective, but coal is the cheapest. You can build a very good output power plant off coal. And China's building a ton
on
of them.
What, 8 a week or something like that?
Yeah, and Davina,
it's a ridiculous number.
Yeah, and they're using what they called their Belt and Road Initiative to basically, and this is interesting, they took the model of the West that we had used for all of post World War II, where we sucked these developing nations into IMF and other loans and money so that we could effectively control them. China's doing that through their own system called the Belt and Road Initiative, where they're making direct loans to these third world countries to build infrastructure. And then when they build the infrastructure, and then when the country can't pay, they come in and they repossess it. And then they control airports and bridges and key nodes and infrastructure, so they can do that. China effectively runs the Panama Canal. We made a big deal. Jimmy Carter made a big deal about giving the Panama Canal back to Panama, even though it was built by Americans. And rightfully owned by Americans. So he gives it back to Panama, and within a couple of years, they're outsourcing it to Chinese companies. Panama isn't interested in running the Panama Canal. And so we've now given the Panama Canal, which is the fast travel shortcut between the Atlantic and the Pacific, to our number one hegemonic rival in the world. And God knows they would never shut it off so that our carrier groups and Navy vessels could not go through there, except they already have. So it's, and we also, fun fact right now, we don't have a carrier group in the Pacific, specifically outside of Taiwan, where we usually park one. The Biden administration has, because the Navy is already under shipped, they started taking stuff offline. Yeah. They've redeployed a second carrier group to the Middle East because of all the shenanigans going on there, and they specifically removed it from the
From the
Asian
Pacific
theater, the Pacific theater right around Taiwan. I have every gut feeling that before, even if it's after the election, even if Trump wins, before Trump takes office, China's taking Taiwan.
Definitely.
Even, yeah,
I'm
like at
surprised
some
they
point
haven't
in,
already, because there's nobody at the wheel in this country.
we
at the
have no
moment.
supplies to, like all of our supplies that we rebuilt up for our forces got shipped over to Ukraine. We don't have,
We
enough
left a
to,
crap ton of stuff in Afghanistan.
yep. We have a crap ton of stuff in Afghanistan. We definitely don't have the capability of doing a two-front operation anymore. I'm sorry. This is just a fact of life. The US military was built post World War II to be a two-front capable force, and we don't
Right.
have that.
No.
We switched to the all volunteer force, and then we reduced the size of the all volunteer force so that we could, I mean, Afghanistan and Iraq are, were two fronts, and look how it broke our country trying to keep, which by the way, minimal forces. We were, I mean, a few 100,000 at a time in one theater, and with maybe 100,000 other, are not big fronts for a war. Like, that's not overwhelming force. And it almost broke our military system. We had National Guard units being stop lost for years at a time. We had people like committing self-deletion at obscene rates because of the way the army was using them. If China invades Taiwan, we're not going to be there. We might have all the treaties in the world. We're not showing up. They're just
Oh,
going
and
to
I
take
don't
it.
think the left. I don't think the left cares. I'm pretty sure the left is perfectly fine with Taiwan being overtaken by China at this point. I
Yeah,
think
which is
the right has an issue with it, but yeah, the left, they have no stomach for
I
protecting
all right.
Taiwan.
So I have moved away from being. I mean, this is something where you do evolve policy positions over time. I was
Hmm.
college age when 9/11 happened. It was right in my backyard. I knew people who died in the Pentagon, family, friends.
Yeah,
No one in New York, but definitely we had people here. So we were, around here at least, we were gung ho, like Afghanistan, go right in. Even with Iraq, and like at least in the people around here, I knew we were all like, let go and kick their ass, right? We're not doing
I
this
think
again.
most of the country was. I
And
think a lot of it is hindsight is
yeah,
2020 stuff
and
on people.
seeing how we did that, seeing what we did, like if we were going into Iraq, the model to use was the 1990 go in,
Shock and awe.
kick their ass, and then leave.
Yeah,
Keep the Middle East afraid of you. Don't get sucked into a quagmire. Like, let them clean it up. And if Iran wanted to slink in and try to take back over Iraq, and let them pay for rebuilding it. Let them do all that stuff, right? Don't put any American treasure into that coffer.
right.
And we didn't do that. And over the years of that, I turned America first, right? And you're like, look, if we're gonna, just like Trump, like if somebody punches in the face, we're gonna go beat the crap out of them, and then we're done. We'll leave. That's, we don't need to occupy and try to nation build anymore, ever. Neocons never again.
Right.
And if the only reason I support defending Taiwan is because they are where 99% of our semiconductors and chips get made. And I hate to break it to everybody, that is a vital national security interest for the United States. You know what I'd really prefer? That we built them here in the United States like we were trying to do until
Yep.
the Biden administration. The CHIPS Act was a perfectly good thing. If we're going to spend government money, let's spend government money on rebuilding manufacturing for key things like that. And instead, no factory has actually opened or even broken ground because the Biden administration started putting DEI requirements on construction crews. Like, is your construction crew building your semiconductor factory 50-50 male female? Like, what the hell? What construction crew have you ever been on that's 50-50 male female? I'm sorry, that's not a job that generally attracts high numbers of female applicants. And also, that's perfectly fine. Bricklayers, there might be an occasional female who wants to do that, but they generally aren't taking that job.
Just
no,
anecdotally, I mean, how often do you see road construction? If there is a female on the crew, they're the one holding
she's
the sign that
the
says
sign for
slow
the
or
stop
stop.
sign. Yep. And there's a lot of good reason. I mean, you know what's funny? No one ever brings up education, right? Teachers are probably 80 to, I would say probably 80% female, 80-20 of the teaching profession. For every 8 to 10 teachers, you'd probably have 8 women and 2 men.
Yeah, that
Maybe a
feels about
little,
right.
yeah, maybe a little higher if you look at specific types of teachers, like maybe math teachers, at least in the past. Now it's probably,
Math and science, it
yeah.
was male teachers,
And whereas the
PE,
English
male
department is
teacher,
probably all female, and
English, art, music, all of those things.
you notice that there's never anybody on the Democratic side like bitching about the lack of male representation in education and how it needs to be 50-50.
Yeah, I mean,
Never. Not a
most of
peep.
the union is made up of women.
Yep. And that's why it's like it reminds me of a point Jordan Peterson made in one of his interviews. Is like, why isn't no one ever complains that, women aren't being plumbers? They don't try to get those jobs. They just want to be CEOs. They only want the jobs that have power. Right.
Or
That's
working on the offshore oil rigs. I mean, that's the dirty job one that gets brought up every time women are, you know, it's a complaint about women not being equally represented in the workforce. It's like, are you going to go work on the oil rig? And every single time the women are like, hell no, I'm not going to do that.
and
Look at
even
what
though
they have to do.
that's a really high paying job, it actually
Extremely high paying
you can make
because it's
six figures
extremely
even.
dangerous and extremely, I mean, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, it's because there's high injury. There's like, I mean, was it one of the fishing show, right, where they're going like dangerous catch, right? There's an
Deadliest
absolutely,
catch.
yeah, deadliest catch. There's a huge injury rate for the stuff for that kind of profession, and you
Yeah.
don't see very many women get into it. So,
Swinging around cages that weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds on a deck of a ship, or ropes that get pulled tight and can cut off your legs or kill you. Yeah,
this is
there's not a lot of
this
women on that show.
yeah, this is another good, Chinese hacks, Chinese espionage, industrial theft. Yeah, China magically got a fifth generation stealth fighter that looks amazingly like an F-35.
Yeah,
God knows how they did that. They're hacking all of our government. Like this is one thing. If you are a business and you build a factory in China, one of the Chinese requirements is that your servers are open to them. Like whatever is in China, they have full access to. So there's no institutional knowledge you can keep safe from China. And what they do is they'll let you run your factory for a few years. They'll learn all of your stuff. Then they'll build
hmm
their own version of it through a Chinese company and undercut you on price.
yeah. It's not much
And
different than what they do with Hollywood. I mean, they have their own little fake version of Hollywood that they try to put out movies that copy the U.S. movies, but at the same time, all they're doing is, putting out the pirated copies of all the movies coming out of Hollywood and undercutting what Hollywood does. So, I mean, yeah, China is great at taking intellectual property.
mhm.
That's kind of their whole model. Is no, we're a communist nation, so we don't let anybody actually develop anything on their own. We just take it from the other countries and then we brand it as ours. I did
Yeah.
want to
And,
get back to
mhm,
Russia just a little bit. I
mhm.
mean, what I said was Russia's really not the threat. It's not altogether true because I mean Russia does have what 6,000 nukes. I mean, at any point they could end the Ukraine conflict if they wanted to. Um, and what was it? Friday night, I went and saw Tucker and Tulsi, and one of Tulsi's main points was, why do we as a country keep poking the bear with Russia? Why do why do the Dems feel this need to try and bring in Russia to everything? And at what point, if you keep poking a country that has the most nukes on the planet, do you not end up in a nuclear war of some kind? So, I mean, there is a threat there with Russia that, I mean, we're the two countries that are most likely to end up in a nuclear war. And the Dems just seem to really want that temperature to rise. I mean, they really are trying to be in a new Cold War with the Russians.
Which is why I think Trump has emphasized in a lot of his interviews, he keeps going back to like the biggest danger is nuclear, right? And
Right.
people try to use it to, oh, he's so stuck in the past. It's like, no, he's being accurate. We are antagonizing the only other country that has nuclear warheads in the volume we do. China has nukes, but they don't have, because they didn't need to invest in that many the way Russia did. They don't have, there's no good outcome antagonizing Russia.
Right.
Now, at the same time, do I believe you should let Russia get away with things if they were bullying on American vital interests? No. But when have we done that? I mean, Jesus, Hamas executed an American hostage 2 weeks ago, and we're telling Israel to stand down.
Right.
That's
Immediately. The
that's
day
our
after.
administration's like, so we've got a lot of other things to get in line before we worry about Russia having what is effectively a internal territorial dispute with Ukraine, because I hate to break it to people who don't understand, Eastern Ukraine was mostly Russian, ethnically Russian.
Yeah.
That,
Which is why they thought if they took out the Ukrainian leadership as quickly as possible, that the people would just be like, yeah, we're Russians.
yep.
It hasn't
And
turned out that way, but that's mostly because everybody in the world is freaking funding Ukraine and sending them money,
the
because
other
that's where everybody launders their money through. They are a corrupt country.
the other thing to keep in mind is that Russia, and I'm not again, I don't want to, I'm not an apologist. I'm just going to speak what is accurate. Russia has capabilities they have not brought to bear that could have, like, they don't want to take the western half of Ukraine as a territory. They really just want the eastern chunk, the vital part that's important for them. They could be doing massive damage to civilians and infrastructure, and they have not. They
Right.
are, I mean, I know that Ukraine, and there's a lot of publicity for when the drone attacks that Russia has engaged in end up hitting a civilian. They're still tending to target infrastructure and governmental and military targets. They have not done what the Allies did in World War II, which is, like firebombing Dresden. Right?
Carpet
Like,
bombing.
there's
Yeah.
there's not been one of those events. And people, and you need to understand, Russia absolutely has the equipment to do it. They have
Right.
tactical sized nukes, they have hypersonic missiles. They could, there's some, there's a lot of targets they could do it. And now we have Ukraine deciding to go on to shenanigans into Russian soil. Good for them thinking that's going to be distracting to Russia, and start poking the bear. And they constantly are trying to get permission to use NATO and American equipment to, I think they really want to do a strike into Moscow. They they want to do some kind of Doolittle thing. They want to take an F-16, fly it over there, and do, just even if it's a token missile, shoot it into Moscow. And God help us if that ever happens, because I don't think, it's, these people don't understand that escalate. Like, look at World War One, how quickly one small series, isolated event can set off an entire global war. And we've already got all these people entrenched trying to support Ukraine. There's a lot of bad things that could happen, and we don't need it. There's no American interest in this aside from politicians who make money funneling things through Ukraine.
Yeah. All of their kids working and laundering money through Ukraine. Soul Assassin says, I heard someone say that as long as Ukraine is in war, they can't join NATO. I mean, that's essentially what started this war. I mean, Biden, they were pushing hard to get Ukraine into NATO. Ukraine was always supposed to be the equivalent of Star Trek's neutral zone. Nobody was supposed to have it. Russia was a hard line. the U.S. had said for years, no, we're not going to bring Ukraine into NATO because we had treaties regarding that. And when Biden repeatedly called for Ukraine to be brought into NATO, that's kind of what set this whole thing off. So, I mean, the second Ukraine goes into NATO, then the rest of NATO has to join the war. I mean, that's how you get World War III. So no, they're not going to be joining NATO. The whole thing is, Russia. Imagine, well, look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's essentially what Russia is looking at with the whole NATO situation. How comfortable would we be with Russia actually putting nukes on Cuba or in Cuba? It's right next to us. It can hit anywhere. Of course, now you have nukes that can basically hit anywhere in the world at any time. But that's what Russia was looking at, is you're putting our neighbors into a coalition that is directly aligned against us. And I still don't know that NATO is even really necessary at this point. The whole point was during the Cold War, making sure that there was a coalition that was lining up against the USSR. After the fall of the USSR, why did we still have NATO? I mean, sure, they've got the nukes, but there was actually a dial down on the nukes. Right now, they've got about 6,000. We've got about 5,000. Somebody earlier in the chat said, don't we have more advanced nukes? I don't think it matters at this point. A nuke is a nuke.
So on an intercontinental ballistic missile basis, the most advanced nuke that matters is what's called a MIRV, multiple independent reentry vehicles. That's where on one ballistic missile, you can have multiple warheads that split off and hit different targets.
Yeah, it's kind of like the bomb that completely different, but picture in Iron Man when they did the demonstration where the one missile went up and then split out into tons of them and blew up the whole mountain range.
Yeah, so the Soviets invented that technology first. And that's what allowed them, like it said in the Reagan movie, like once you get over like a few hundred, it's game over for the whole world anyway. Like it doesn't matter. Like, and the fact that we have more advanced, like, we might have neutron style bombs and this and that. It's all automated. So as soon as our launches are detected, their launches go off, mutually assured destruction happens. That's, Judgment Day footage from Terminator 2. Yeah. That's what's going to be happening. There might be survivors, but the world who's going to give a rat's ass anymore at that point? You're just going to be trying to survive in a nuclear wasteland. Nation states won't matter.
Yeah. And going back to Friday, watching Tulsi, part of her speech was about that. What do you do when they're in the air? You've got 15 minutes to live. And she was bringing up the example, what was it? I can't remember what year it was, but when all the alerts started going off in Hawaii, do you remember that? The text message alerts that said their nuclear strike inbound, get to shelter. There is no shelter. Sure, the rich and the politicians have shelters. We all know about the Greenbrier now. It's been shut down as a nuclear bunker. But
yeah, it's not too far from my house.
The Greenbrier bunkers were built to get the government underground. DIA, Denver International Airport. We know that there's whole underground structures there that are meant specifically to be a bunker if something were to happen. But the rest of us, no. What are you going to do? Hide in your basement? Or are we going to go back to, yes, Eric, the golf course Greenbrier?
In West Virginia,
bunker underneath the hotel. You can actually go see it. It's got, gigantic steel doors, and it's basically just, it's a whole, enclave for surviving a nuclear attack. It's close enough to DC that they can get everybody over to the Greenbrier if there was an attack. Same thing with DIA. I mean, it's an international airport, so, and it's in the center of the country. You're going to be taking out Colorado Springs first, of course, because of NORAD. I mean, where I live is like what, number 3 on the nuke list. It's DC, something else, and then
Cheyenne Mountain
Colorado
and
Springs, Cheyenne Mountain and Colorado
Yep.
Springs. But yeah, they've got the bunkers. We don't. So I mean, they being the politicians and the elites, the rest of us don't. So what Tulsi was trying to get at was, you know, you get a warning like that saying that there's a nuke inbound to Hawaii, and everybody, I mean, what do you do in that situation? I mean, you're just screwed.
Here you go. You can now
It
take
doesn't
tours.
take, yeah, you can go tour the Greenbrier bunkers.
See that?
Because once it came out that it was a bunker, they stopped using it as a emergency bunker for the political class.
Yeah, you can see like this is. They built it so it would look just like a wall, like a normal wall. It even had the wallpaper, and inside it's like this 4-foot thick steel door. They have all like underground this resort. They had all this stuff, and now you can take tours of it. It's craziest thing. They have you can it's you go down there and it looks like if you've ever seen Terminator 3. This basically was what they designed their, what the John Connor ended up going to, like their little, fallout shelter for the continuity of government, where they had all the leather chairs, the old computers, and all that stuff. It's all there, typewriter, everything.
Yeah,
because
everything
this was
you would need for the continuation of the government.
Yep, and this was and that that risk we minimize that risk now, and we don't think about it because we have, and this is going to be weird to say, we have lived in a relatively peaceful era comparatively.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I'm sure you're a little bit younger than me. I don't know. Did you ever do the nuclear
Oh, the duck and cover.
school drills?
Yep.
School
I mean,
drills, getting under
we
your desk and putting
my
your hands over your head.
the
Same
first
thing you do for a tornado.
the first school I went to was a DoD school in Japan, which
Yeah.
is right. I mean, if you want to talk about right around the corner from stuff,
Right.
So we had drills and did things. I mean, but I'm
Yeah.
happy
my do anything.
I'm happy my son doesn't have to have that mental, like, honestly, it was to just try to keep panic to a minimum. But it
Right.
you were, if you were that close to a strike, you were toast.
Yeah, you're gone.
So it doesn't.
Hiding
it's
under
good.
a desk isn't going to help. Hiding in a bunker does.
It's good that we've it's good that we've moved past that. I like Trump, to his credit, that he doesn't get this, was actively, because of his formative years, where that was the big, like, he never lost track of the he didn't, lost the forest for the trees, right? He still realized nuclear weapons and the ability to wipe out the entire planet with one button push is not a good thing. So he was trying to, like, détente with North Korea is because they have nuclear weapons and they can hit our allies and the US. He was trying to make deals with Russia to decommission nuclear weapons and reduce that again, which, by the way, Putin wouldn't necessarily be disagreeable to, because he knows he's got enough. And as long as, I'm sorry, if we can make deals to denuclearize, if Reagan was able to do it at the height of the Cold War, I don't have a problem making those deals with Putin now to reduce nuclear armament. We should be doing it. I mean, the biggest risk from North Korea, if people don't understand, isn't that they have enough nukes to actually, like, wipe out. Like, it wouldn't be mutually assured destruction, but they can set off high altitude.
Crazy enough to use it.
Well, no, they have enough nukes where if they did them high altitude as an EMP weapon, they could basically take out the West Coast and East Coast grids fairly easy,
which would cascade into the whole country. I mean,
Yeah,
you take out
because
one portion of the grid, and it's going to cascade.
as funny as they always like, when I remember when Newt Gingrich was running on this in 2012, like, we need to harden our grid against EMPs, and people were like, "Ha ha ha, look at this idiot." Remember the same deal. When they, like, you're living in the past. What are you worried about? Because a bad actor, and even a terrorist one, with one nuke that they set out high altitude to do an EMP over our not protected grid, can shut down entire states for
Yeah.
days, weeks, months.
And people are not prepared for that. We're starting to sound like a comics division show now.
Yeah. I'm just, it's not, I mean, but it's stuff that we could easily fix, right? These are easily remedied thing. We're spending trillions of dollars on a Green New Deal, but we didn't think to maybe actually do the like, I don't, if you want to talk about stuff where I don't mind spending the money, I don't mind the government giving the money to
Hardening our
electric companies
grid.
to harden the grid so that it stays safe.
I mean, hell, in the past few years, we saw just a guy with a gun shooting at, what was it, transformers out. What state was that?
It was in the Carolinas, I thought.
Carolina. Yeah, North Carolina, I believe. Shooting out just transformers and watching the grid go down throughout the whole state. And that's how soft everything is at the
That
moment.
was just
Look
one
at Texas
308
a few
rifle.
years ago, having that mass freeze event, and the whole grid basically going down because they've gone to wind power. Texas, there just 10 years ago, Texas is where I would have wanted to be, because Texas was the only state that still had its own grid. And it has the oil, it has, ranch land, it has farmland, it has everything you need to survive. But when they when they started going to green power, yeah, even their grid started cascading into neighboring states going down, because they've hooked into the national grid and they've gotten rid of the plants that they need to keep Texas actually up and running. So, yeah, we'd be in major trouble if anything like that happened, because most people are not prepared in any way. Most people don't have the water or the food supplies. And that's where Comics Division is always pushing the prepping stuff. I don't know how many people actually take it serious enough. I've got some stuff. I've got pallets of water, but outside of that, no.
There's
I
two
wouldn't be able
routes
to
you
do
can go
anything.
with the prepping. If you don't have like a ranch where you can make basically a survival enclave, it's much cheaper and space saving to prep a different way, which is to have enough alternative supplies to take other people's supplies.
Exactly. And
Having
that's also what's going
by
to
the way,
happen to the
a,
people who prep.
a case of 9mm ammunition takes a lot less space than food supplies, but it can magically turn into food in the right scenario.
Yeah, except the
Just,
preppers also tend to have plenty of ammo themselves.
no,
I
I'm
mean,
thinking the first people down will be the billion. I forget who brings up this point. Like, the billionaires who spend all this time and money making their like hardened, places. I think it was Cernovich on Twitter. He keeps saying like, all you're doing is creating a nice place for your security force to chill after they eliminate you if something goes down. Because they're hiring all these ex special forces people, and they're like, after things go to heck, they're not going to be worried about a paycheck and medical benefits. They're going to take your stuff and get rid of you.
yeah.
So,
But that is where it's kind of concerning that all of these people, all of these billionaires are building bunkers in the past few years. What are they what do they know that isn't being told to the rest of us?
so if you're what is it, judge people by their actions, not by their words, right? You've got all these
Right.
people telling you that climate change is going to destroy the world, that are buying beachfront property for
Buying
millions
beef
of
for
dollars.
Yep. And then you've got all these billionaires building bunkers like Zuckerberg, and there's been quite a few others, but Zuckerberg is the one that we all, saw just what, a year and a half, 2 years ago, started building a major bunker system underneath his properties. So, something to think about. But let's get back to the actual week in politics, I guess. I mean, we went on a 30-minute rant about nuclear war, I guess. So,
Yeah. It was, I get, it's a takeaway from the Tulsi Tucker event. It was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that's Tulsi's big thing, is she is completely against us getting involved in any wars anymore, or, like I said, poking the bear, and that's what we keep doing, is poking the bear, and there doesn't seem to be a reason for it. So, yeah, but the Tucker Tulsi thing was kind of cool. If you haven't, well, most people haven't been to one of the shows yet, because that was only the third show on the tour. But it really is laid out kind of like watching a Tucker Carlson show. They have the sponsors for the event come out and give a few speeches. So that's basically the commercials for the whole night. Tucker comes out, gives one of his 10 to 15 minute, maybe even 20-minute monologues, just going over everything that's going on. And then he just sits down and interviews a few people. So at my event, they had the president of the Heritage Foundation came out, and they did Tucker did, loud car. Tucker did a interview with that guy for about 15-20 minutes, and then they brought out Tulsi and did about an hour interview with her. So it was interesting. It was like watching a taping of his show, only the crowd interacts a little bit, which that was kind of the weird part about it, is because it's being taped like it's a actual interview, like a TV show type thing. There are no pauses for applause or anything. So they just keep talking when everybody starts applauding for whatever point they're making. So it was kind of weird, but also it was fun to go to. I was glad I got to do that. So yeah, Parrot Head. I thought this was Brahma Bull show, not a comics division show.
Yeah,
and it overlaps. That's politics. I mean, because we have to be ready. So, what else did we have? We went over the endorsements. Oh, RFK ballot issues. So
he's off now again. Yay!
Yeah, RFK had to fight to get on ballots in certain states, and then after cutting his campaign short and endorsing Trump, now he's having to fight to get off of ballots in some states.
My favorite was the Michigan one, where at the same time, the Michigan Secretary of State was fighting in court to remove Cornel West, but keep RFK in two different cases. And she ended up losing both, I believe. I think Cornel West was allowed back on the ballot, and RFK, after appeal, was taken off. But I could be, the Cornel West one is not as well reported, so I didn't
He's not
see
as much of a factor. RFK was actually getting some percentage in the polling. Cornel West
the last
really
news story I see was from August 30th, where Michigan Appeals Court agrees with lower judge Cornel West belongs on presidential ballot. So that could totally be a if you guys remember in 2000, where it was Ralph Nader, where he doesn't even pull like 1%, but he pulls just enough in a key zones
in battleground states,
especially in Michigan, right, where there's going to be a large contingent of people, because even though she didn't pick Shapiro, there's going to be people who might be one issue Palestinian rights, two-state solution type voters who might have, like, end up dropping some votes to Cornel West because he's a little more out there. And that could be enough to swing Michigan. So yay, because that the ideal scenario for Trump would be for RFK Jr. to come off, because he definitely took more votes from Trump than Kamala, which I think is now borne out by the polls post
he's getting the
his
bump
removal.
In the polls. Yeah.
And having Jill Stein and Cornel West stay on the ballots, because they definitely pull some of the more left-leaning ideologue voters who otherwise would probably be between a choice of Trump and Harris, would vote Harris if they come out and vote. So the ideal one is, yeah, so Nevada Secretary of State gave Jill Stein the wrong paperwork, so she won't be on the ballot. So yeah, they don't want Jill Stein on there because she's Green Party, and that disproportionately takes away from the left.
Takes from the Dems. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can see the election interference everywhere, even if it's not directly what we would call fraud. It is they're trying to rig the game as much as they can, trying to keep RFK on the ballots, trying to keep Jill Stein off the ballots, all that kind of stuff. It's just more election interference. So yeah, we're gonna see the shenanigans again. What we really need is, I I've said it for a year or two. The only way this comes out in a way that the country doesn't destroy itself, I think, is landslide victory. Because anything else, if it's close, it's going to tear the country down. I think. What do you think?
Um, I think if it's similar to 2016, where he ends up, what was it, 2016, around 320, 312 to 320.
Yeah, I think it needs to be in that 320 range.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to win the popular vote. That's, I mean, I mean, I think people are smart enough to understand that not California and New York skew that, because Republicans are so demoralized in those states, they don't even show up to vote. So the Democrats can run up several million vote, margins.
Yeah, I mean, just in those states, yeah. I mean, and who knows how many Republicans don't vote in those states because they know it's a lost cause. I mean,
Exactly.
if there wasn't voter suppression going because of how states are actually voting automatically, then who knows how many people actually go out for the popular vote.
Eric, it needs to be Trump 315 plus at least, but I doubt the GOP still has the legal infrastructure to make that happen. That is a good question.
I think Laura Trump is putting in what we
He
need,
is, and
but
we
there's
haven't
not
had
enough
to.
time.
It's not like 2020 where there was so many. Here's where things are a little different. In 2020, judges were 100% deferential to the COVID issues
To
and
COVID, yeah.
let things slide. Now we've seen, this is why I think Trump may lose Wisconsin, because once Wisconsin's Supreme Court swung liberal, they started allowing shenanigans.
Mm,
Whereas Michigan, I think, is more, and we've talked about two factors to make me think that I think Trump wins Pennsylvania and Michigan is more likely than Trump winning Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is captured by Evers and their liberal Supreme Court at the state level, and Evers has no presidential aspirations. He wants to just be the God King of Wisconsin,
right.
and the Supreme Court there is in letting him engage in those shenanigans. Whereas in Michigan, I think number one, the black voters in Michigan are actually, especially male ones, more inclined to vote Trump than other areas of the country, especially because of the auto worker component. And as I've said so for several weeks, Whitmer is a snake, and she 100% knows that Kamala, being the sitting president,
A possible 8 years screws over
possibly
Whitmer.
puts her outside of her window, right?
Mm-hmm.
She would want to run in 2028 as the incumbent or just finished governor of Michigan with high name ID and high positives within the Democrats. But if she's, because she's not going to stay governor for 20 years, right? So if Kamala is the incumbent in 2028, she has to sit that one out. So now we're talking 2032. She's possibly several years out of being governor by then, and people will
Yep.
have moved on. So she won't want her. I think that Shapiro in Pennsylvania and Whitmer in Michigan think that 2028 is their time. And so they are going to end up snaking Kamala in their states.
Yeah, the shenanigans that they might have pulled in 2020, they won't pull this time because they're trying to get in at the next election cycle. Give Trump his 4 years and then try to fight him yourself. I agree, and I also think that Georgia, now that Trump and Kemp seem to have made up and are playing nice together, Kemp is a extremely popular governor, and I think that pushes Trump over in Georgia, even though the polling and some of the other markets seem to think not. Polymarket is showing Georgia, as a likely red state. I think we're going to get back to where Georgia was a solid red state up until
Well, Kemp
election
has
cycle.
Kemp has a machine. It's not so much that he's just popular. Most governors are popular. It's I want to just get that out of the way. Most
Sure.
sitting governors, as long as you haven't done something completely ass backwards, have a high
Jared Polis.
50s to low 60s approval rating. That's a regard like Larry Hogan, who got aspirations of greatness in his head, was because he was the sitting governor of Maryland. He managed to win as a Republican, and he had approval ratings in the upper 50s, low 60s. That's normal. Like Andy Bashir as a Democrat in Kentucky, because if you don't do anything to rock the boat and people are generally happy with how the state is going, you get good approval ratings.
Yeah.
So it's rare for when a governor has bad approval ratings, it means something has gone ass backwards.
Newsom, Polis,
yeah,
the ones
yeah.
that get recalled but don't actually get
I mean,
recalled.
Polis was sitting on, being able to lock in the generational changes for Colorado, and he might end up screwing it up because he's let too much go happen too fast.
Yeah, the sanctuary state thing going on here right now is not all that popular, even though they keep trying to hide that the stuff that is being reported in Aurora is real.
Colorado, you need to basically, it's very similar to Virginia, and actually very similar to a lot of states. The key to Democratic wins is Denver and Boulder, and running up the scores in those metro areas,
the major cities. Yep.
Because if you look at it, the rest of Colorado is basically ruby red, like deep red.
Yeah, that's how you get Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, so it's yeah, this is the part that worries me. Eric bringing it up. Not sold on the Kemp Raffensperger will help Trump with the election issues. I think Kemp may. The question is, Kemp is also bought and sold by China, and that's my risk. It's not so much the American. Like, there's a lot of evidence of Chinese money going into Georgia, and China doesn't like Trump. But at the same time, Kemp, as popular as he looks on paper, if he ends up screwing Trump out of Georgia twice, he definitely doesn't have any national capability. And he might even screw up in Georgia because in a primary setting, enough Republicans might be unhappy. Like, the first time they'll blame COVID. The second time they're going to say, Kemp, you did it. You snaked him. And we're not going to keep you in your, again, being a god emperor of a state.
Well, and you've got the, what was it, 2 Senate positions in the last go around that after the presidential election went so awry in Georgia, then you had the special election and the runoff election for Senate in Georgia, right? Because we had Warnock and I can't remember who the other one was, but I mean, Georgia basically put us in this whole situation. And Trump didn't help his cause attacking Georgia for those Senate seats. But yeah, I think Georgians probably have gotten the message from the past 4 years. We'll see. I still see it as a mostly red state. It's going to depend on whether they are still pulling the same kind of shenanigans that they did in 2020.
Yeah, it's
but it is a question mark state. I think Pennsylvania is still the state that the whole election is going to go through. And oddly enough, Real Clear Politics this morning has Pennsylvania going red, but still somehow is figuring out a road to victory or a path to victory for Kamala Harris. And I don't see the Dems being able to win it without Pennsylvania. Do we want to go ahead and bring up the polling? It's about the time that we do in this show.
Sure.
Do you
Yeah,
have it pulled up?
I do. Let me go ahead and get that. And because we've got one in a, I want to. This is add to the stage. This is the one that's got people losing their shit on
The New York Times Siena poll.
The New York Times Siena poll, which is dropped just today nationally. This isn't even a swing state poll. This is a national poll of likely voters. Had Trump up 1, and that if you go to the raw numbers, he was up 2 before they weighted some things. This is after Kamala's convention. This is this was taken September 3rd through September 6th.
This is after the interview.
This is after her interview. Her debacle. This is like, how do I put this is like this is a full scale like red alert DEFCON 1 at the Harris campaign, because they have
everything that they've done to try to prop her up has failed, at least according to polling, which polling is just snapshots of what's happening at a given time in the race. But yeah, that one, they've got to be freaking out, and they've got to be freaking out that they picked Walz instead of Shapiro, because Shapiro probably does not have the same issues. He has issues within the Democratic Party because of how anti-Semitic they are at the moment, but Walz has been a disaster for them. And I think we're starting to see that in the polling. Yeah. I think this will be even uglier next week after the debate, which we'll get to the debate after we go over the polls.
So this is the first major new one. There was an Emerson poll slightly earlier in a week from the 3rd and 4th where it had Harris up. And this is something like, if a Democrat is in the 1 to 2 point lead margin, the statistical analysis says that a Republican is still likely to win the Electoral College.
Right.
And even at
popular, but win the Electoral College.
Yeah, even at 3%, it's closer to 50-50 on the Electoral College. And she's not at 3. If you look at the spread right now, we're at a 1.4. And that's including where all of these other ones had been Harris. Yep. What's also interesting is that for all her shenanigans, Emerson and we talked about an Emerson poll way back about how skewed Emerson was, because they were the ones that had her up 12 in Pennsylvania.
Right. Just ridiculous numbers.
Yeah.
Unrealistic numbers.
Yeah. So they do a lot of, they are definitely not accurate. Like, they skew on, definitely towards Democrats. And it's got Harris up only 2 with a 2.9, almost 3% margin of error. I mean, it's the polls this close, and like historically in 2020, Biden was up 7. And
right.
In September of 2016, Clinton was almost up 3.
Which is the margin of error on most.
Which is margin of error. So I don't think.
The other interesting thing is this is the first poll outside of Rasmussen to actually have Trump in the lead again. And
Trafalgar even had him in tied. Yeah.
Yeah. Rasmussen has been stating for a month and a half. Yeah. The other polls are weighting things heavily for the Democrats at the moment, just to try to show her having a bump. I mean, they're trying to skew what people are actually thinking in this election. It's more election interference. And the only reason that I somewhat like Rasmussen is because they're independent. If they're wrong, I mean, they go under. You have to try to be accurate if your whole business is independent of, say, the New York Times or, ABC News or Fox News or anything else. They have to be as accurate as they can. So what Rasmussen did in this latest round of polling has brought in all the recall stuff from the past few years and put that into their weighting because they thought they were maybe going too much on the Republican side. So weighting it, inversely to the rest of the polls. So they brought in more information to try to get rid of that lean towards red. And yeah, they're still coming up +1. And now other polls are starting to reflect that. So we'll see. But like I said, polls are just snapshots of what's going on in the race at the moment.
Exactly. And it's in the end, we don't have a national popular vote system. So these national polls don't even really matter that much. Like Trump's going to win West Virginia by 40. Trump's going to lose California by 20. There's, those will,
Yeah,
but it's,
those are facts of life.
so if we're polling, like if we're taking a national poll and we sample and we get a lot of phone calls to California and West Virginia, it doesn't matter. What we're really looking at is that the election effectively comes down to about 7 states, if you count. Let's see: North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. So we've got 7. And on the outside chance, possibly maybe New Hampshire, but I don't buy into that because I think New Hampshire has kind of moved more left. More people from Massachusetts emigrated to New Hampshire. They've moved politics more left. So I wouldn't. Now on the outside, there's always the chance that because people are so unhappy with things this election season, you've got a possibility of an unexpected result where so many people are just like
economy
secret, what we would call kind of secret Trump voters, where like they'll tell everybody publicly, I'm for Harris, I love that vibe, Brat Summer, yay. But they're like, I went and just bought both groceries and I got 2 plastic bags and it cost me $90.
Right.
Then they'll
in the
make
states where you're still allowed to have plastic bags.
So what's funny is secret ballots, right? That's one of the things, there's a lot of places that fight against secret ballots, especially unions, because when they're trying to unionize a business, they don't like the idea of the secret ballot because once you get in there, they won't know how the worker, and they can't pressure them. They can tell them, they can say whatever they want outside. But secret ballot kind of makes all that stuff on the table. I mean, in 1980, thanks to secret balloting, nobody expected Reagan to trounce Carter the way he did.
Right.
I mean, the polls still, and to give people an idea,
anonymity is freeing.
Yeah. In August and September, they still had Reagan losing by double digits in a lot of polls to Carter. It's one of those things, like they thought Reagan was going to lose in 84 through up until the conventional wisdom. It was his second debate where he used the line about, I'm not going to use my opponent's youth and inexperience against him.
Right.
That line is great. It's a great moment, but that didn't get Reagan 49 out of 50 states. He was already winning.
Yeah.
People were already happy with Reagan and they were already going to vote for him. So I think sometimes we get trapped in these moments that we like to, say that's what turned the tide. No, Reagan was going to win. I mean, if you win 49 out of 50 states, it wasn't close, and you weren't even in danger.
One line in a debate that swayed everybody in the country.
But again, pollsters were telling you up until that second debate that that Reagan had a possibility of losing. Not even so Dukakis was up like by a dozen in August of 1988, and then Bush Senior trounced him. I think now we've got this is Polymarket. Yeah.
Yep. Polymarket. As late as last Sunday, it was 50-50 or 49-48, something like that for Harris. So there's been a lot of movement in the betting markets, and the movement is pretty much going down for her. He's come up a few points. She's gone down multiple points. He's gone up just a couple. But they now have Trump 52-46, and in almost every battleground state, they've got Trump leading, at least the ones that matter. Michigan, we still think that's closer than what this is reflecting. And Wisconsin, I think you said you don't expect Wisconsin to go red, right?
No, I actually that's the out of
Out
those
of the seven,
states, that's the one I would
out of
be
the
least
six.
comfortable buying in. Like I think that is kind of accurate that Wisconsin. Yeah, my order would be I would think Wisconsin would be the one where Harris has the best chance out of that
Yeah,
group. And I would actually put Nevada above Michigan only because Nevada is so owned by unions. They and especially specifically the SEIU, which is the Service Employees International Union, they can swing because of Las Vegas. They
right,
could swing that one more likely to Harris. Because again, said it before and said it again. My theory on Michigan and Pennsylvania is Whitmer and Shapiro snaker. It'd
right,
be hilarious. It's a distinct possibility that he ends up winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, loses Georgia because Kemp is bought and sold by China, and so he still ends up winning, and it totally skews what people are thinking.
right. I do find it semi funny that they still have Pennsylvania as a toss up when there's a 10-point lead in the betting for Trump. And there was a good point made. We talked about Nevada a little bit last week, and I had said, I mean, they depend on the tourism. There was a good point made in our comments from last week that with the amount of gambling now that is involved with sports, and it being basically you can gamble from anywhere, um, the tourism isn't as necessary for um, the casino survival, the sports book survival, because the sports book is basically worldwide now, and you can bet from anywhere through the Vegas, sports books. So I concede that point. Yeah, the tourism may not be as much of a driver as it used to be, but these are still billion-dollar industries all located in one city. That yeah, they need people, whether it's through the online gambling or actually being in Vegas. But you have to have money to do either of those things. Go to Vegas and gamble, or gamble online. Right now, what we're seeing is people don't have the money to just do things like that as much as they did when the economy was strong. So I still think Nevada is going to lean red.
Yeah, from a personal, pocketbook side, everything about Trump economy versus Biden economy says that you would want Trump in if you're living in Las Vegas.
If you need more people to have money in their pockets, that's just extra money to be spent, you need Trump's economy automatically. So that's where the polls and the and poly market's sitting right now. Um, I guess the last thing we need to cover is Tuesday night, the debate. What are your predictions?
I mean, debate performance is largely a result of expectation games, like who exceeds expectations versus who doesn't. My natural inclination is to think that Harris is so terrible from all her previous debate performances that she'll crap the bed.
Yep.
So part of me is like, okay, have we lowered expectations so much that if she shows up and can put a coherent sentence together, we could use that meme where the entire bar is exploding in cheers, for
Right.
her.
The one
Like,
from the intro.
yep, exactly. So I don't know. I think that Trump should, especially I like the idea that he was prepping with Tulsi, who knows how to take
Who
her
shut
out.
her down completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do think that Trump should handle it pretty well. And if Trump has a performance on the line of what he did with Biden, where he was restrained and stuck mostly to his policy positions, I think we come out with a decisive win. As I think she's going to try to bait him into like you're a convicted felon, did with the porn star stuff. Try to just sully him in the eyes of people. Like they want to make sure they can drive the wedge into the suburban white married woman vote, which, as much as people want to say that Trump has a problem with women, he wins that vote. He wins suburban married women by about
Right.
5-6 points.
Married women, definitely. Single
So they,
women? No.
yep.
Yeah, it's got to be a policy debate for him. He has to keep hitting her on policy because she has not released any policy except for his policy that she's taking. So, I mean, the interview she gave, really nothing substantive. He's got to keep nailing her on the policy, and I find it absolutely hilarious that she was arguing for open mics so that she could use her girl boss lines, and they're not going to let her.
Nope.
So Trump has to be restrained, keep the personal attacks down, and stick to the policy. And it's an automatic win for him if he sticks to the policy, because we have a record of what he did. We have a record of what she's done. I mean, she keeps trying to run away from Biden, and she is too closely linked to the Biden administration because she's the freaking VP. That's all he has to do. We will be streaming the debate Tuesday night on my channel. It'll be a Bullpen special episode. Right now we've got Comics Division, Culture Casino, Shags, me, Little Chad. I think Slender Dad said he was going to do it too. Still waiting to hear from a few other people. So we'll have a good 6 or 7 of us, breaking down the debate, watching it live. We will try to not over talk the debate as much as possible so that everybody can actually watch the debate with us. If it goes down on YouTube, we're over on Rumble. So either way, you'll be able to watch the debate with some commentary, make it somewhat stomachable for people. And yeah, that's the plan. I think the debate starts at 7, so we'll probably get going right around 6:45 my time. So your time, that's what? Eastern time, that's Mountain time. So 7 p.m. Mountain time, 9 p.m.
Eastern.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go about 15 minutes before. We'll have everybody give some predictions, what they think's going to happen, kind of like we just did, and then we'll probably go for a little while afterwards, breaking down what happened on the debate and maybe checking in on MSNBC and CNN, seeing how they're trying to spin it. So that's the plan for Tuesday night. We hope you'll join us. Our first episode was live streaming the debate between Trump and Biden, and that went well for us as a show. And I don't know if you can still argue that it went well for Trump. I mean, it went well in that he completely destroyed Biden, but that's kind of what's put us into this position now with Kamala Harris. So we will see, but hope everybody joins us there. Chad, what do you got coming up this week?
All right, we got the debate show that you just talked about. I think we also then I don't think we have anything else, at least before the Ascendant Art team. We got although if anybody wants to, we've got a new channel that Slender is running, Ascendant Arcade, where he's putting up game clips and streams pretty much every day, so that's good. Otherwise, our main channel, the Ascendant Art Podcast, will have our show Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And I don't think Brahma will be going to a Tulsi and Tucker show, so he'll probably be back on this week. So you can join us and hang us then.
Yeah. As for me, I've got the grandbaby coming over today for the rest of the afternoon, I think. I'm going to be cooking breakfast for dinner because we've got a few people coming over for my birthday. So we'll be partying the rest of the day. I did have a tragedy last night. I showed Chad earlier, but last night I set down my 1.75 liter bottle of Buffalo Trace, it tipped over, and it literally, the whole bottom came off of the bottle just from tipping over and apparently hitting the exact right spot. So a brand new bottle of Buffalo Trace, Fallen Soldier. So that made me sad. Now I've got to go find some Buffalo Trace here in town for the rest of the week, because that was my last bottle of it. But yeah, we've got Monday Night Meltdown. I don't think I'll be doing Cultures tonight. We'll see. Depends on how late everybody stays. Tuesday, we've got the debate. Wednesday, I don't know if Carrie's back from her vacation, but I am supposed to see her tonight or tomorrow. She's supposed to come by because she's traveling. And Thursday night Throwdown, Friday night Ascend and Art. I think that's the week. So thank you for the happy birthday wishes. Hope everybody has a great Sunday. We will catch you all later, and make sure to be there Tuesday night. Have a
Thanks
good
for
one,
hanging
everybody.
out, everybody.